Prepare to journey back through time in this episode of Rock and Roll Flashback Podcast.
Welcome to Rock and Roll Flashback. I'm Jumpin John McDermott, and we'll be looking back at some of rock and roll's greatest artists, songs, and stories. In Rock and Roll Flashback Podcast number 6, called Flashback to Our Youth, my podcast partner Bill Price and I were discussing events of our youth, and I recalled my garage band days, but my memory was fairly sketchy and inconsistent, so I thought, why not contact my 2 garage band bandmates? 3 memories are certainly better than 1, although not always. But after 3 extensive video chats, I had accumulated over 3 hours of material, lots of mirth and memories, some of which was contradictory and some of it not for public consumption. The result is this 3-part series, which I'm calling Shades of Past, and that also happens to be the title of one of our garage band songs. So here we go. Shades of Past, whoa, shades of past, whoa, shades of past, whoa, shades of past, whoa. Today's podcast is Shades of Past, Recollections of a Garage Band, Part 1. This podcast recalls one of America's most underappreciated garage bands, the Limited Sensation Domaine. From their humble beginnings as the Quad Squad in 1963, this band evolved into the pioneering and influential Astronomical Survey. As they continued to hone their garage chops, the Survey became known first as Steel Hog and eventually as the Limited Sensation Domaine. The Domaine peaked in popularity around the time of their December 1968 Crossroads gig, only to suffer a series of musical setbacks and completely disappear from the American musical scene. I was privileged to be part of that garage band. Back in those days, I was referred to as Firefingers, although it was never clear whether that was due to my work as an arsonist or to my guitar playing proficiency. Today I am honored to be in the virtual presence of 2 of my bandmates from that heady and prolific music time period. With me on this podcast are my friends, the infamous Shannon Brothers, David Douglas, a.k.a. William McKinley Shannon, and Richard Charles, a.k.a. King Rick Shannon. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Dave. All right.
Well, it's good to see you both. This is the Shades of Past, Recollections of a Garage Band. This year happens to be the 60-year anniversary of the founding of the Limited Sensation Domaine Garage Band. Unfortunately, the municipality of Monroeville, Pennsylvania, has declined to hold a parade in the band's honor. Therefore, it is up to us, the 3 bandmates, to try to recall the essence of this intriguing garage band. We were just 3 middle-class white kids in suburban Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, who were trying to play the blues. As Dave has so aptly put it, the only blues we knew was the color blue. Where was the secret location that the band did the bedroom, bathroom, and garage practices and recording?
It was 1340 Knollwood Drive, Monroeville, Pennsylvania. It's 16 miles east of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Originally, it was a very rural area outside of Pittsburgh, and we had horse manure in the backyard, so every time we played, we opened up the windows and smelled horse manure.
Okay, and that's, of course, in the Park Forest subdivision, because right. I wanted to know if there's any truth to the rumor that the home and garage at 1340 Knollwood will be entered into the National Registry of Historic Places. Is that possible?
That's possible, yes. We've entered that in.
There might even be, you know how you go into some historic places and you find flint and arrowheads and things like that. Will we find anything that, Dave, you may have left there?
Guitar picks.
Guitar picks. Okay.
And an occasional pipe.
An occasional pipe, right?
Yeah.
So tell me, during what time period was the band active?
If you go back to the very beginning, I think it was probably early 1964.
Maybe a little longer than that.
All I can remember is that Jack had his radio, everything, and we did all that stuff. It may have been 63, 64.
Yeah, 63 was when I got the radio and was starting to listen to, well, I listened to radio on a little transistor, but when I got that other kit thing.
That whatever, that kit.
Yeah.
So that's when we started, but we didn't really start playing music necessarily. Then we created song lists, like top 40 list. We made up our own band names. We did all sorts of stuff, and we just communicated that. It was on a Saturday morning. We did our top 40, and that's essentially what we started doing. And I think when the Beatles came out, that's when we started playing music. And
that was 64 when they came out.
Yeah, so they were on Ed Sullivan on, I think, January 64, and that's when we started writing music. But Jack wrote all the music. I just sat there and pretended like I knew what I was doing, which was pretty much nothing. And then it followed from that. We did that for a couple of years. We moved into Jack's bedroom to my bedroom, that type of thing, where we brought different instruments in, the Kent guitar, Magnus organ, tambourine, all that. So that's when we started. It was about that time frame.
Okay, 1963, 64, and actually we were a wannabe pirate radio station. Think about what they were doing in England, offshore in England with their pirate radio station. We were trying to maybe do a little bit of that with fictitious top 40 lists and fictitious band names. We had mentioned the Quad Squad, of course, but the Don Royal Five, the Quad Squad is 4 people like the Beatles. The Don Royal Five is 5 people like
Dave Clark Five. Correct.
So I think we were on the right road, I guess. And eventually, like you said, we actually started writing lyrics and to the top 40 music, and then added in the music part of it too. Music was evolving in the 1960s, and I think that we had a lot of influences that maybe got us into that. Looking back at what I did, I got interested when I had that little tiny little transistor radio that I was listening to, and I guess my father thought I should do something a little bit more elaborate, so he had me take a course in radio at the Monroeville police station. They had a evening course there. He dropped me off, and it was all these geeks who were physics gurus. They knew what, transistors, resistors, ohms, they knew all that stuff. It was over my head. But I did have that little set that allowed me to transmit as well as receive within a quarter mile.
That was down the street, down Norwood Drive.
Yeah, about that far. Yeah. And that got us started with station XQR. And we started making up what were then, I guess, names of groups and songs, which were very appropriate for 13, 14-year-old boys, very childish. We didn't start out with the lyrics. We basically start off with a top 40 format, and then I don't know what we did with the radio part of it, but I'm not sure anybody heard it broadcast.
That was in Rick's room. I was in the other bedroom listening to what was going on and couldn't figure it out.
Actually started in Jack's bedroom, and on Saturday mornings we would broadcast, and we would go down our list of songs, our top 40 songs, and say who's number one this week, who's number one next week. And so we did that, and then Jack, you started writing music. We started singing. You started doing stuff. I don't remember exactly what it was. I don't even know if it was a guitar. It was just something. Well, I have all the original song titles, or tracks, everything else, in Accord with Major Descent, There Once Was a Man, all those songs, and you have hundreds of pieces of paper with stuff all over, with guitar chords, words, and I can't even begin to tell you.
It's probably stuff on piano, since I was still...
Yeah, I think it was piano.
That started my writing, and the rest is history. Welcome back to our current rock and roll flashback podcast. In case you have fallen into a trance, mesmerized by that short sample of this garage band's music, we're having a virtual chat with my friends, the Shannon Brothers. The three of us were bandmates, and this podcast is Shades of Past, Recollections of a Garage Band, Part 1.
About what year was that?
It was 64, maybe 63.
63, I think it started.
It was before the Beatles.
Yeah, and I think back then, of course, we're listening to Top 40, which in the United States was predominantly, Beach Boys, Four Seasons, and then all of a sudden, the Beatles. And I know I was so impressed how they made girls go crazy. And I thought, hey, that is neat.
That's the way to go.
Yeah, make the girls go crazy. And that plus the music, I just like the music.
And I think that it was even, the Beatles certainly jump-started all that. We made drawings. We named our group the Quad Squad, all that stuff.
You were broadcasting from Liverpool before the Beatles came on.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So during that time period, that early period, how were we listening to music? In other words, we were in the Pittsburgh metro area.
WDV wasn't on yet.
No, we started with KQV. Their music was sort of the soft rock. I mean, they had the late 50s, early 60s soft rock. I mean, it's not rock, pop, I guess is what you call it. And then they started, when the Beatles came out, they started picking up a lot of the English groups, the British Invasion. So it was, KQV is what we primarily listened to. So it was one of those stations, about the only station we could get. And then I guess it was probably 67, 68 is when WDVE came out and started playing rock. I mean, actual rock and roll. It was on an FM station.
It was album-related rock.
Yeah, and that really was the transition from AM to FM, and it's happening throughout the country where singles and 45s were big up into that 65, 66 time period, and then bands started to produce albums, and album-oriented rock, as Dave mentioned, came into being. I know on KQV, I remember Chuck Brinkman was one of their big guys, one of their big disc jockeys. Right. I think he introduced the Beatles when they came to town. And Dave mentioned Clark Race at KDKA. I think he had an afternoon show also on TV that highlighted some of the groups. And those guys actually plugged for some records that went nationwide, which was kind of interesting. So basically it was 45s initially, albums later. The National Record Mart, I remember going there and plunking down. Was it $1 for a 45 back then?
Oh, it wasn't that much. I don't think it was $1.
50 cents? I don't know what it cost, but I remember...
LPs were about $3.
Okay, so maybe it was 50 cents for...
Yeah, it wasn't. It was about 50 cents,
Yeah.
The band that really got me was the Dave Clark Five. To me,
the Kinks.
Yeah, and the Kinks. The Dave Clark Five became just a little bit before the Kinks, and they had the rhythm, that the Beatles didn't have.
Well, and they also... Dave Clark was pretty smart. He recorded loud. When you heard his songs on the radio, your volume... may have been nice and quiet for Pat Boone. Then all of a sudden, Dave Clark 5 really pops out, and of course that beat.
Yeah. No, that was definitely what got us going.
Dave, you weren't initially involved, but all of a sudden you started sneaking in, because I know you're on some of those track lists, the choreographed track lists. You actually contributed some original songs. The classic, of course, was "I Really, Really Hate You," which ends up all of us are screaming at the end of it. I'm not sure what that was, but
that immediately rose to number 1 on the list.
Well, it was early grunge, really raw,
very raw. Yeah.
Hope you're still with us after listening to that lovely music.
Was I playing the Magnus organ?
I don't know. You may have been, because we had, basically that was our instrument at the time, and then you guys got an old harmony guitar?
Well, we had an old harmony, we had an acoustic I had, which then the electric harmony, and then we got an amp. And I don't remember what that amp was, Jack. It was a small one that had the reverb, spring reverb. You remember that?
Yeah, I don't remember too much about the guitars part. I know the Magnus was a key part, because I know the one time, I remember specifically, we were sitting in your bedroom, Rick, with Dave, and we were doing Christmas songs.
Right, yeah. God rest ye merry gentlemen.
Yeah, but we were using, it was all off of the Magnus.
And the tambourine.
And the tambourine.
We used the tambourine for a drum.
But we did not have guitars, I don't think, at that time. Or for some reason, we didn't use it on that song.
Yeah.
But I specifically remember Dave being there for that.
Yeah,
so.
He was there. We had something that we were pounding on later.
Charlie Tips can.
Well, we did that. That's for sure. But there's something, we had a snare, and I don't remember where the snare came from.
I don't remember that either.
Actually, I do.
Oh, did that come from Morgantown?
Yeah, Morgantown.
Okay. All right. Well,
Off the record.
just as editor's note here, some things are not going to be elaborated on for protection of the parties involved.
So I guess I started joining you in about 66 or 67.
I think you had graduated. Because what happened is when you moved out, we took over your room and started recording a bunch of songs. I mean, Jack, I wish I could find those tapes, because there were some pretty interesting songs. And then Dave, when you came back during break or when you were flunking out, I'm not sure which it was, you joined us in those songs, and that was the couple of I don't know if that was when I Really Hate You came around. It was sometime around that.
I think I Really Hate You was before Dave had graduated. I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I'm not positive.
It was kind of vague during that whole time.
Yeah. I don't know why, but it was the Pittsburgh smog that was messing us.
Yeah, that's what it was. All I remember, Jack, is Dave, you were running track, you were doing all sorts of other things and running around with the chicks. And Jack and I were serious musicians. Actually, Jack was a serious musician. I was just banging on stuff randomly, trying to have fun. But that's how it really was. How we got started was just that, sitting in a room and just jamming, just turning on the tape recorder. You would come in with your songs, the chords for the songs, the words. We'd write the lyrics. We'd practice, do some harmonies, hit the tape and let it go. And then we'd flip over and dub it again. We'd do another track on top of that. And I think we only major times just 4 tracks. I don't know, like you said, I think we may have tried to overdo that, but when you take from a reel to a cassette, that's where it just went haywire. I think just sitting we spent hours and hours and hours and hours sitting in the bedroom just randomly playing stuff. But you, Jack, you pulled all of this stuff together in these massive amount of songs. It's a historical nightmare or a pleasure for somebody that wants to read all of it.
Well, and I choreographed some of it too. In other words, I said Dave on drums, Rick on guitar.
That's what all this is.
Yeah.
As you can say.
Yeah.
It has each one of the tracks.
Yeah.
Who's doing what. On this playlist, this is first tape, second tape. There are 55 different songs, and 29 have them erased next to them.
They're that good, huh?
Including number 17, Jack's performance erased. Song number 18, same as number 17, erased. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we kept Rick's song.
Yeah.
This is hysterical. Oh, and then the infamous Ocelot beer.
Oh. We multi-tracked to the point of cacophony.
We did it in the bathtub. We ran into the bathroom and held it in the bathtub.
Yeah, we did that. And then the other one was that coal bin by our fireplace. We stuck a microphone down there to get the reverb on that. Yeah, which was good.
Well, that was a deep cut from the Limited Sensation Domaine band's musical archives. Initially, I think we just had a small little reel-to-reel. It was just like a little box
that's right.
one.
Like a little.
Yeah.
But was that yours?
3-inch reels.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what it was. I think that was that your recorder, Dave? I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
Oh, okay.
All I know is you had to get a new microphone
That's the one that went into the
after it went
glass
in the
of
water glass.
banging on with a pencil. That's right. It was a little solenoid microphone, wasn't that?
Yeah.
What it was?
The little round microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was funny. Yeah, and that's where we had all the wobbly sounds because in the tape going through on the 3-inch, it wasn't as tight as you would get on the reel-to-reel, and it was and then it split, and then we'd have to get Scotch tape to try to tape it back together again.
Well, when did you get a reel-to-reel recorder?
I got one in about I was in my first year of college.
Yeah, that's when Dave got it, and he kept playing Jackie Gleason, the Jackie Gleason band.
Jackie Gleason and Montavani or something like that.
Yeah, and that's what you used to play in your room. That's what I'd hear all the time. So I remember so it was like that. I think it was in '66 we got the reel-to-reel.
66.
Yeah.
Because that's when I think that's when the multi-tracking went up even more.
Long songs.
Oh, long songs, yes, yeah.
Was there tremolo on the amp, that Heathkit amp? Or is it on your little amp you had before?
Yeah, it was on the amp. It was a reverb, the coil at the bottom of it. I don't remember where that amp came from. I'm drawing a blank as to where that came from.
The reason why I ask, I noticed the really old stuff, that seemed to be the prominent effect what we were using was tremolo.
It had tremolo and the reverb. It was that coil at the bottom of it. So we got that really weird kind of thing. We used the tremolo with that reverb, and that's where we had a lot of that bizarre sound coming out of it.
And which amp did we pick up and drop down?
And that spring sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which amp was that? The older one or the new one?
No, it was the old one. It's the old one that had the spring reverb.
Yeah, that was interesting. I haven't found any audio of that yet, but I'm sure it's out there somewhere.
Oh yeah, I guarantee.
So Monroeville's Gateway School District had a program for elementary students to practice on a plastic flutophone before moving on to real instruments. And this was, I guess, my downfall, because despite having taken, years of piano lessons, I flunked flutophone in the 6th grade. I was unable to take a band instrument. So what was your experience with flutophone, and did you play a band instrument in junior high school? Why don't we start with Dave?
I didn't play the flutophone because I was in high school by then.
Okay.
And I didn't have a program like that. But I did take lessons. I took drum lessons in grade school, and I was terrible. And then I took guitar lessons, and I couldn't get a whole handle on it and gave up.
You gave up on both. Well, the drum lessons, did they start when you were in Mount Lebanon or when you'd moved to Monroeville?
I had a practice pad that I couldn't get the hang of. The little rubber pad on a wooden bass, and you have to play it like sideways, and I just couldn't get it.
Okay. You might have benefited from having a metal Charles chip potato chip can at that time.
Yeah.
That might have worked out better for you.
I could never get the drums.
Okay. Do either of you remember when the Charles Chips can just kind of evolved with the tambourine? Is that what you think?
Well, yeah, it was at the same time of the tambourine. It's when Charles Chips, they made the delivery every week. I guess they brought the chips. So we finished with it, and I had that the tambourine was put on a stand that we could pound on, and then the chips can, so I could hit the tambourine in the Charlie Chips can. But as far as my experience with instruments, it started in the 4th grade in Mount Lebanon. For whatever bizarre reason, my parents decided that I should be playing the alto horn, which is somewhere between a tuba and a trumpet. I mean, it was just sort of a big instrument.
Not like a flugelbone or flugelhorn.
Nah, it was similar to that.
Similar?
I mean, similar.
Okay.
Yeah. So I played that. Well, I say I played it. I blew into it for a while, and then moved to Monroeville, and they had the flutophone thing, but I had also told them I could play the alto horn, and they said, well, you don't need to do the flutophone because you can go play in the band right now. So I said, I don't want the flutophone because my parents had rented it back in Mount Lebanon, so I was free of a phone at that point in time, so I decided let's go with the trumpet. So that's when I started playing the trumpet, and I played in the junior high band, the marching band, and regular orchestra.
Didn't we sometimes take breaks and play touch football and basketball with Lepore?
Pick up and fumble, that's what it was, yeah.
Yeah, with Jack Lepore and...
Harvey Bennett.
Yeah, he was a good basketball player, wasn't he?
Yeah, both of them were good. They were definitely ringers. But yeah, we played that, and we also did, in the wintertime, snowball. I can't remember what we called it.
Snow football?
Snow football, and then when you got the ball, you had to go shoot a basket. Yeah.
Well, you have to have a way to unwind, right?
Yeah, right.
Either of you try out for junior high chorus?
I can't say.
I think I was in the chorus in junior. It may have been in Mount Lebanon or in Monroeville. I can't remember. But I remember singing "Climb Every Mountain" in an assembly. They put me in the back so they couldn't hear me.
That was like our church choir. We were in church choir, and all I can remember is back row. Put him in the corner. And I figured how to sing was just move my lips. That's all.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
Well, that would explain a relatively little-known fact about the Limited Sensation Domain was that we had a very controversial album that came out. It was called Exploring the High Seas, where it was a C, The album's controversy really stemmed from two things. Its meager sales, but also from its ambiguous title, because it was unique. The title was unique. It was thought by many to be a triple entendre with 3 meanings, okay? Exploring the high seas. Of course, following up on our talk about being in a chorus. And by the way, another one of my failures, I tried out for and did not make junior high chorus. That tells you something right there. But first, I think you think of the C note, and we as band members had great difficulty hitting the high C note, the high Cs.
You had a hard time?
We all 3 did. In fact, we had trouble singing in key, let alone hitting the high C. A second reference, of course, was that, David, you had a brief adventure traveling the waters as a longshoreman. Was it on the Great Lakes?
It was on the Great Lakes with an oarboat.
Yeah, so traveling the high seas, that was another interpretation of our album. And of course, the third one was that it vaguely was reference to getting high. But of course, we never did that. So that's all part of that triple entendre. So yeah, I was a failure at choir in junior high. Maybe I got a little bit more confidence as I got older, but I struggled. And when you listen to some of our early recordings, they're really rough.
Well, rough is an estimation, but I would say it was experimental.
Yes.
We took limited talent on limited instruments and turned it into sound. So
Well,
That's what it was. It wasn't music, it was sound.
Yeah, it was sound sculpturing is what I call it.
This has been Rock and Roll Flashback, a podcast called Shades of Past, Recollections of a Garage Band, Part 1, where we have reminisced about one of America's iconic garage bands, the Limited Sensation Domaine. I'm Jumpin John McDermott, and until next time,
rock on, rock on, rock on.